Oh, hi there. I'm Daniel Markham. I'm the guy that wrote the domain model for domain modeling. I'm here today to show you the next evolution of my AirBlog sort of serverless blogging system. If you watched the first video, you kind of realized that I had a client that came to me that asked for a highly secure blogging system. They were currently using WordPress.com. WordPress has a lot of issues. And so I kind of sat down and thought, well, gee, what's the minimum amount of stuff I need to actually run a blog anyway? It's got to be customizable, it has to be scalable, they have to be able to enter entries, adding and removing components is probably one of them, skinnable, not a lot, I mean, it's stuff. It's probably one of the simplest web applications you put together as a blog. So I started tightening that down into minimum amount of code, and I came up to this with this idea of using Airtable and Vue and then AWS to put it out on the cloud, so there's actually no server, there's no back end to manage, there's really nothing except for some files you keep of templates in GitHub, and as you add stuff to Airtable, it automatically is published when you click the button. I mean, it's all good. So the features right here are serverless, lightweight, data access fully separate from the UI. I decided to use Markdown because I wanted people just to be able to type text if they wanted to, or they could actually put some Markdown stuff in. I want it pluggable, skinnable. I decided on vue.js. I've been playing with Vue. The more I play with Vue, the more I like it, which is cool. I can't say that for a lot of tools, but this is cool so far. I picked Vue Bootstrap for a back-end UI kind of template. A lot of good ones out there. You don't really have to use any anymore. Now with the CSS advances, you can just go straight CSS. But I felt like Bootstrap was something everybody knew. And I also, just to do something different, I organized my entries also by question in addition to the author and whatever. So I added another table in. So those are my features. And I had to manage those features against the tightly secure, highly scalable blogging system that was serverless. So how did I do? Well, let's go to Airtable here. And I've been putting some stuff in, as you can see. And I've got about 30 entries in. I have 3, 6, 7 tables. Entries, tags, categories, media, blogs, authors, and questions. So far, so good. Really, the only way to prove out an architecture is to use it. So I did that first little video last month. I played with it some for about a month. I sat down last weekend. I said, okay, what do I need to do to keep this thing going? I was kind of concerned that just by showing you the proof of concept app, you would say, well, gee, Daniel, anybody can write a couple lines of code. Show me an actual system that might actually go to market. So I said, okay. I can do that. As we can see, the entries table, I actually have a blog field, a template field. That means entries can have various templates, public descriptions, short and long, authors, title, content, excerpt, reference link, categories, tags, questions, media. If you've watched the first video, this will all look kind of familiar to you. I just wanted to show you again that, first of all, it's all in Airtable. There's no form to enter blogs in. You just go down here and enter a new record if you want to do an entry. You can also build an Airtable form, and you can send people. I mean, Airtable is super integrated with everything. So if you want to build a front end of this, you can do it a bazillion ways. You can set Zapier in so that when you enter a record in, stuff happens, or you can put your comment again here. It's very cool. So totally open-ended. I have nothing to worry about here. It's no stuff for me. But the data did actually change as we went along, which was kind of cool. Like I said, as I use things, usage sort of begets architecture, not the other way around. I think it would have been easy to sit down and say, oh, gee, what's the perfect blogging system? And then start, with an MVM model or MVVM. And no, that's El Crapola. It's not going to work. So I just made the simplest thing I could get anything out. Then I started playing with it. And then I added what needed to be added. And there's a few data changes here and there. So there's the data. There's why we're here. So I wanted to keep it easy to use for both the developers of the blog and the users. I think Airtable is about the easiest I can make it on the back end for entering stuff in. So for people who wanted to customize it, I mean, what would actually a template look like? So let's take a look at one of the templates. Oh, yeah, here we are. Here we have an alternate domain page, and as you can see, it's 50 lines of HTML. I mean, that's pretty dang simple. It is HTML. It's not PHP as you would see in WordPress or bunch of other stuff you could do here. Oh my God. I have a head. I have a body. I have a container. So I wrote one Vue app to wrap the whole page. Then I've got a Vue component that does the top navigation. Then I write a component that does whatever you want in the middle, and I can swap those things in and out. And I have a couple footers I wrote. Here's the sort of the plain footer. And then I have an about page, and I have a little pop-up dialog box I put to read the article. So the nice thing about doing Markdown is I can show the blog entry two different ways fairly easily. You can either click on the button and see just plain text. I can strip out the links and formatting, so you just got, boom, easy to read plain text. Or on the entry detail page, I can actually process the Markdown so that you see all the images and stuff. And there's some cool stuff going on there that I talked about in the earlier video. So that's kind of how I handled the easy to use versus easy to customize. I just made everything into components, and I didn't start really by wanting these components. I actually I picked the middle piece and wrote that component in Vue, and then I picked the footer, and it just sort of incrementally became componentized as we went along. I believe this is probably the best way to be easy to use for developers, because I'm building it as I'm developing it. So if I'm developing something and it's tough for me to develop, then I'm building it the wrong way, which is a really tight feedback loop. So I should show you the component model. So what does this look like behind the scenes, Daniel? I know you're asking, so let me show you. Yeah. Okay. So here's a fancy dancy UML diagram. Pretty cool stuff here. Basically, you have a page, and the page through its document object actually it's a browser has a document object. Anyway, through the document object, you have an AirBlog database engine, and you have a main app view. So I just showed you the Vue app that wraps the whole page. It's a standard Vue component that I've added stuff to. Then I created an AirBlog class on top of that handles all the data work. So if I need to get data, put data, slice and dice data, look up stuff. One of the concerns I had early on was, am I going to rebuild a relational database just like on my own? Because that's the old thing we talk about when people say, well, I just sort of did things on my own. Well, golly, people have done this for hundreds of years. Well, people have, but it's more important for me to validate the fact that I don't need relational integrity, or I don't need tight coupling between my types. That's cool stuff. That's like a benefit. I could just keep plugging stuff in off the shelf, and I would end up with just a big pile of crap that would be very difficult to maintain. So went to the built the Air AB object that handles all the data entry, and I separated that out from the Vue component. I built a component I call AirBlog Base, which is a base sort of an abstract class for the Vue components, and then the AirBlog Base talks to the AirBlog engine to do all the sort of, not the data slicing and dicing, but the data format presentation stuff. So between those two objects, they should provide all the services to any sort of downstream Vue component that you could imagine. And there's only 7 tables here, so that means not a lot of services. So that's how I handled the big design up front versus emergent design discussion. I went with emergent. So the next kind of discussion I had was encapsulation versus globals, and that was a more difficult one. I didn't have difficulty coding it. It's a more difficult one because it calls into like, why does certain code go one place or the other, right? Why are certain components and methods hidden? Why are certain visible? Why would it make sense in one case and not another? Very fun stuff, and I plan to go over that in the blog essay. For now, let me just kind of show you how it works. If you go to the page, where are we at here? Blah, 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 blah. This may be the page. It may not be the page. It is the page. So here we have a list. I actually have this top one, AirBlog to Into the Abyss. That's the essay I'm working on. I've decided just to throw my essays up as I write them, so they're all kind of crap. They're just going to evolve, and then I'll publish them. I could easily set the publish offer on. Let's take a look what we got. So I'm a developer. I'm looking at my new component I have, and well, golly, first thing I want to do is take a look what the data is. So I just go Document, AirBlog, and then I've got stuff. I've got various public functions. Look up an entry related to items. Select entry by ID. It's probably a dozen methods I felt like I needed, or actually I proven that I needed. And of course, this grew and it contracted. So I just pick one of these tables, my tag, let's go, my authors, my media records maybe. No, there's all my media records, and these are just reactive JavaScript components. If you've used React in the past, heck of a ton of fun with that. It's good stuff, but it makes it kind of weird. It's like having an inversion control or dependency injection kind of all the time. So there you can go to document AirBlog and pick out whatever you want. This also means the view components can go around behind sort of the basis class and get stuff off the data table if it wants to. Would I want to do that? I don't know. I haven't found a reason to yet. Or rather, actually what I did was, as I developed it, I went around and I just used the document object over in the view objects and just got what I needed, made it all work. And then when it came time to refactor, I went back and made it go through the proper channels. So that's kind of how I handled the encapsulation for some globals. I threw it all in one big bucket, and then I made the problem force me to put it one place or another as I used good coding practices. There's also sort of the extensibility versus easy component creation that you run into when you're creating a library. I guess probably the coolest example that I can show you is like the STL libraries for C++. That dang thing will do anything. It is a little more difficult to use. So you're kind of balancing how easy. So let me show you what sort of a plain component would look like here. Where we get this? There's my AirBlog base. And like I said, I'm going to do a lot more technical coding. This is just sort of a video walkthrough. I'm going in the blog essay. I'll talk more about the code. There'll be bunnies and code. It'll be math. It'll be fun. You'll like it. This is my most complex component right here. There will not be bunnies. I'm sorry. And then here I have something I haven't started yet. Entry list plain component. Maybe that's the most simple one. So this is just a simple list. This is what we just looked at, which is pretty much just a simple list of blog entries. Oh, by the way, there's the essay I was referring to as far as the first one. It's got a video and stuff. It introduces this topic. Okay, so this is basically 30 lines of code. It handles pretty much listing your entries. And if you know Vue, you know this code. Look it up on GitHub. You can walk through it. I try to put some comments in places that would kind of be difficult for you. I am not going to review Vue code for you right now. I liked it. I didn't refactor everything to the nth degree, but as I started refactoring, it just got cooler and cooler. So I think 30-line components is probably a pretty cool metric as far as can I build something without having to like go to college first. Then there was something else. What was the other thing? I have my notes right here. And unfortunately, when you write like I do, and you can't read your own notes, that kind of sucks. Oh, I wanted to show you main CSS. Okay, so one of the interesting things, questions I had was kind of what would be the toughest thing to do here. I've got Vue, I've got AirTable, I've got Bootstrap, I've got VS Code I'm using. What's going to take up my time as a developer? CSS. I'll be dang. Freaking pixel pushing. As a matter of fact, if you look back over here, you'll see that this doesn't look right. What the heck's going on with this thing? And you're right, it doesn't look right. It's probably the last piece, but I got into this sort of pixel pushing bike shedding exercise. If you know what bike shedding is when you're in a discussion where neither outcome really matters. It's like, hey, what color would you like to paint the bike shed? Heck, you can argue about that forever. It's just sort of an aesthetic question. So, I got into, does the header look good here? Here's my menu. Should the menu align left, right, center? Now, of course, I checked it on responsive on, it should work fine on your cell phones and stuff. But, I mean, stuff like, should this filter be centered or not? I mean, that's good. It needs to be done. It doesn't need to be done by me right now. However, it can't take it. That took up the most amount of time. And what I did, there's two sort of ways to go down this if you've ever written a Vue component. Sort of The first way is to sort of put everything together in one component. So say I had that list, that menu list here. I could just write a component for the menu list or a component for this entry list like I was just showing you. And I could put the HTML template, I could put the JavaScript, I could put the CSS, but in one big file, plop it on there, and you've got a component. I love that idea, and I probably will move toward that idea at some point, but that's not the idea I'm using right now. Matter of fact, that's exactly the wrong way to go, I think. I don't want to blow out a system I don't understand into small pieces that I can't maintain. It's just, that's deflected, guys. So what I did was I, once again, piled it all in one spot. So if you look at components, it's, I don't know, it's 600 lines of code. Oh my God. But it's 15 components in there. If you look at AirDat, it's, I think it's about 500 or so, but it's all in one spot. So I have 7 tables. I don't have 7 database classes for each of those tables and then a validation. This is the in-tier crap we went through in the 90s and aughts. You don't want to do that. No, bad. So from a functional standpoint, I'm throwing all my methods, leaving my data global, throwing all my methods and all the stuff I need in one big bucket, and then I factor out, and then I figure out what my chunks of stuff are. Right? So it's a discovery process, and as part of that, the hardest part was the CSS. And the reason why is with CSS, as you guys know who do web development, everything's on top of everything, right? So the bootstrap was on top of the view, which is on top of everything else. And if I start going in and adding classes, it becomes even gnarlier. So really the way I chose when to stop doing this development we were talking about earlier, I was like, I could just keep with the menu and all. Why did I stop with just the menu like that instead of continuing? Because what I'm trying to figure out here by exercising the behavior of the system is how many nested divs do I need to get the CSS behavior? I mean, that's what really came down to be the toughest thing was, do I need a wrapper for everything? It's a bootstrap menu, or should I wrap all my view components a certain way or not a certain way? That turned out to be non-trivial, especially when I wanted to go back and refactor stuff. So what I decided to do in CSS is, for now, probably not forever, but for now, still leave it in one big pile, and I identify my view component, where are we at here? Yeah, by a class name, and then inside that class name I put the stuff. I just kind of walk down the tree and put the stuff as I want it. I'm only at 400 lines of CSS. I'm good. And what that allowed me to do, combined with having all the components in one spot, is start factoring out common CSS for components. This is a discovery process where I know everything in there is correct. Like if I went the other way with a root component and the children, it would have been a mess. And it would have been a mess because I'd been down in component X. I'd forgotten about component Y because it's a different file. That would have been a mess. So it's all in one spot, and I keep chugging along. And the CSS is gnarly. I have some more work to do in the CSS, probably. I have some more work to do on the, a little bit more on AirDat, and some more, of course, I could spend the rest of my life on the UI. So I found that I was 95% of the time just doing CSS pixel pushing stuff. At that point I realized I'm not actually exercising the system enough to know any more about it, so it was time to back off. Okay, so what's left to do in this thing? Well, what do we got here? Okay. Wrong app. One moment, please. This has been a hoop. I really have had fun with this. It's one of the reasons I came back to it. That and to kind of show you what's possible. I have some repository somewhere. There we go. And it's on GitHub by Daniel Markham, AirBlog. All right, so there's my features. And still to do, at the top in your head section, you've got your social graph meta tags. I need to go add that. I proved it was possible last time, but I haven't actually did the code for that because I don't really need it, and it's not really a technical problem. That related items bar that I just showed you kind of looks like crap. I've done it 3 different ways in 3 different components. That's something, since I've done several times, I can pull out. Now I have multiple examples, make a root component. I would like to do a subhead for my articles, so that if you have like a title, maybe authors, and that navigation bar underneath that, you would have everything else. Not necessary, but I would like to do that. This only handles up to about 99 entries because AirTable will only give you 99 entries. If those guys are kind of funny, they probably don't want me like sucking down 40,000 records at a time. even though I'm sure I would be happy to do that under some certain conditions. So yeah, I just need to add paging in. Once I get past 99, once again, paging's not a technical problem for me. There's the cool AWS thing where like you just add it to Airtable. There's nothing else to do. It goes out on the cloud. I don't that doesn't really change the nature of the coding part of this. Love to do it. Love to look at some AWS architecture stuff. It is freaking rocking from what I'm seeing. I was tremendously impressed with what you can do with AWS. But not important to this, so we don't do it. OQL looks awesome too. Also not important. So here's my code budget. I have an essay down here you guys should look at about code budgets. Code budgets are critically important, especially if you're sort of winging it instead of sort of doing this week-to-week sprint thing. You should have a code budget for everything you do. Okay. There's more technical stuff in the blog. Let me show you some of the intro. I'll show off one more second, and then we'll be done. I actually have another site. I have so this is my Newspaper 23 site. I added a second view for this just to sort of have fun. Newspaper23.com. It's got about 40 entries in it. And as you can see, it's got more of a candy bar kind of feel to it. From here, I can vote up or down. I can navigate, look at a summary for an article. Like, here's your summary. And then if I look at the entire article, I just click right here. Yeah, and there you go. Well, this is the subhead thing I was talking about right here. Okay, guys. I'm Daniel Markham. There will be links before and after the video to show you where to go to read the essay, look at the GitHub files. If you try this at home on your own, please let me know how it goes, because I'm really interested in how it works for you as a developer. If you're trying as a blogger, sure, send me what you got. I mean, I don't mind reading it, but the developer part is really cool. I hope you guys have fun today, and I will see you on the internet. Adios.